President.
The senator from Tennessee.
President, we have morning business.
We are.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'm delighted that the senator from Colorado is in the chair when I speak, because I want to speak on a subject about which he's the foremost expert in this chamber, at least in day-to-day operations, and that is of school systems. And I think he'll appreciate and understand what I'm about to say in ways that many people will not. Yesterday I had a telephone conversation with a member of the editorial board of a prominent newspaper in this country who asked me this question. She said, "Senator Alexander, how could you and the National Education Association possibly be together on the teacher evaluation question? How can you justify that?" And then she said, "And when has the NEA ever done anything to encourage the evaluation of school teachers?" That's a good question. Both questions are good questions. And what she was referring to, of course, was the draft announced yesterday by Senator Harkin and Senator Enzi, who are the ranking members of the Senate committee that handles education. And in it included a provision on evaluation of principals and teachers. At my suggestion and that of others, but contrary to the suggestion of a number of people, it does not include an order from Washington that all 15,000 school districts have a teacher principal evaluation system. It does not include a definition of what it should be, and it doesn't include the opportunity for the education secretary, whomever it may be, to then issue a number of regulations defining what a teacher evaluation system would be in Denver or in Maryville or in Nashville. What it does include is the following. For the first time, it specifically allows a state to spend its Title II money, that's $2.5 billion of federal funds that goes to states. It allows that money to be spent to design and implement a principal teacher evaluation system that is related to student achievement. Now, in my view, that's the holy grail of public education. If we could ever figure out how to do that and to get everybody to do it, I think it would do more than any other single thing we could do to help our children learn what they need to know and be able to do, except some law that would make everybody better parents. And I don't know how to pass such a law. So that's the first thing the Harkin-Enzi draft includes about teacher evaluation. In Tennessee, for example, that would mean that there would be about $41 million this year that could be spent for that purpose. There are about 63,000 teachers in Tennessee, so that's about $660 per teacher per year of federal funds that could be used to design and implement a principal teacher evaluation system related to student achievement, and this is the first time that's been specifically allowed. Secondly, there's something in the draft legislation called the Teacher Incentive Fund. Many school superintendents, like the distinguished senator from Colorado, know that fund very well. We know it in Tennessee because of the work in Memphis. Basically, it's a grant that was included as a result of language in No Child Left Behind, and Secretary Spellings then beefed up the program, got the money appropriated, and it recognizes the difficulty of figuring out how to reward and evaluate teachers in a fair way, especially if you're going to base compensation on that. And it says, okay, if you want to do it, we'll give you some money to help you try to do it. And so you can do it one way in Knoxville, another way in Denver, another way in Los Angeles, and hopefully what will happen is over time we'll find lots of fair ways to reward outstanding teaching and determine outstanding teaching, and smaller school districts and other school districts can borrow ideas from one another. That's been a big success. And Secretary Duncan supports it, I support it, has support all the way around. President Obama has supported it. The third thing that's available for helping develop teacher evaluation systems is a program called Race to the Top. $700 million federal dollars in fiscal year 2011. That's a lot of money. And states had to compete based upon their, among other things, their ability to develop principal-teacher evaluation systems. My state of Tennessee, and I can brag on them especially because I had nothing to do with it, at least recently, won that competition, won $500 million, which is being spent today which has been spent to develop and implement an evaluation program for all the teachers in Tennessee. And then there's another item in this draft which fits in here. I would call it the Secretary's report card. All previous education secretaries, and I'm one of them, have tried to use the bully pulpit. So have presidents. When I was governor of Tennessee and we were working on a master teacher program, President Reagan came to Tennessee to say it was a good idea. That was very helpful to me at the time. He didn't try to say, this is how you should do it. He said, I recognize what you're doing, I applaud it and encourage it. And Bill Bennett, when he was the education secretary for President Reagan, went to Chicago and said they had the worst schools in the country. Made a lot of news. But when a secretary uses that bully pulpit, he can make a difference. We have a very good education secretary right now, Arnie Duncan, and what he now has at his disposal, no one else has had before. He has 8 or 9 years of reporting requirements of schools all across the country, and there are about 100,000 public schools he has this information for. And he can go around the country and say, this is good, this is bad, I'll put the spotlight here, I'll brag on this, let's do more of this. He can do that in a way that nobody ever could before. So this is what is in the draft that we're talking about that would, for the first time, get the federal government significantly involved in creating an environment for teacher principal evaluation related to student achievement. One is $2.5 billion of federal dollars in Title II. All of it can be used for this purpose if states want to. Teacher Incentive Fund, number 2, that was $399 million this year. Race to the top was nearly $700 million. And then there's the Secretary report card. I responded to the editor who called me and said, look, I know something about this. In 1983 and 4, when I was governor of Tennessee, we became the first state in the country to create a statewide system for rewarding outstanding teaching and paying those teachers based upon that. At that time in Tennessee, not one teacher made 1 penny more anywhere in the country for being a good teacher. Not one teacher made 1 penny more, was paid 1 penny more for being a good teacher. So that was what we did in 1983 and 84. She said, how hard could that be? She said, everybody knows that some teachers are better than others. We all know that when we put our children into school. Everybody knows that. Why can't we evaluate teachers? How hard could that be? Well, I was a little bit amused by that because those were exactly the same kinds of questions that I was asking in frustration 30 years ago. I would say it to every college of education in the country. I couldn't find a single one that would help me in any significant way evaluate outstanding teaching. Now, that may sound like an overstatement. It's not much of an overstatement. I had dean after dean, education professor after education professor say, you can't do that. You can't determine that one teacher is better than another one, especially if you plan to reward them, compensate them based upon that. I found that patently ridiculous. Patently ridiculous. Just like the editor was trying to say to me, every parent knows that. My mother put me in one first grade instead of another first grade in Maryville, Tennessee, because she thought one teacher was better than the other. She had an opinion about that. She was a teacher herself, so perhaps she knew. We all have those judgments to make. And IBM hires a lot of education people, and they have teachers, and they know some are better than others, and they pay them correspondingly. Colleges and universities hire a lot of teachers. They pay teachers all the way up the ladder, from lower amounts to very high amounts for distinguished professor. They can find a way to make a distinction, but somehow we've gotten in this rut 30 years ago that said we can't make any distinction among teachers based upon their ability to teach, especially related to student achievement, and then we especially can't take the next step and pay some more than others. The reason I thought that was such an urgent problem 30 years ago was that we can't trap women in our schools anymore to teach. Women are in the marketplace now. That's what we did for many, many years. So if we want to attract and keep the very best men and women teaching in our classrooms, we need to be able to recognize excellence when we find it, to encourage it, and to reward it with compensation. I can remember sitting around with a group of governors in 1980 when the late Bill Clement, the governor of Texas, said to mostly a group of Democratic governors, when is one of you, and he used another word, so-and-so's, going to get the courage to take on the NEA? And what he meant was every single one of us knew that the National Education Association had its foot on everyone who tried to pay some teachers more than others. Well, you know, I was young and maybe didn't know better. So in my second term, I created a bipartisan commission with the Democratic leaders of the legislature, and we set out to figure out a number of things about education, including a master teacher program. Well, the long and short of it was we did that. It took a year and a half of my time as governor. I must have spent an hour, 40 or 50 minutes, percent of my time every day engaged in an ongoing brawl, mainly with the National Education Association, as to whether we could do this or not. They defeated my proposals in the first year. I came back the second year and won by one vote. And we put in place a voluntary program that before long, up to 10,000 Tennessee teachers voluntarily went into a career ladder program, became master teachers. Many got 11-month and 12-month contracts and 10-month contracts. It raised their pay, it improved their retirement, it gave them distinction, and I have teacher after teacher come to see me today to thank me for that, including the current leadership of the Tennessee Education Association, whose organization killed the program after I left office. So it's appropriate to ask, Senator Alexander, why are you and the National Education Association in cahoots on any sort of teacher evaluation proposal? Well, I wanted just to say briefly here why. A lot has happened since 1983-84. Governor Hunt, Democratic governor of North Carolina, and others have worked to create the Board of Professional Teaching Standards. The NEA and the American Federation of Teachers both participated in that. That was a step forward in recognizing and certifying outstanding teachers. The AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, has always been open to this proposal. I remember the late Albert Shanker saying to me, well, if we can have master plumbers, we can have master teachers, especially if you're going to pay them more. And he invited me to come out to his national convention in Los Angeles to talk about it. President Bush and Secretary Spellings with the Teacher Incentive Fund, President Obama and Secretary Duncan, who have taken a lead on this despite the fact it's not popular with many of the constituents of their party, have stuck their necks out on this, and I applaud them for that. The Gates Foundation has put money behind it. Bill Gates has told me personally that this is one of the two things he wants to do in education with the time and the money that he's got. So there's a consensus. Not everybody might not say, as I do, it's the holy grail of kindergarten through the 12th grade, but there's a consensus that finding fair ways to reward outstanding teaching through teacher principal evaluation related to student achievement is urgently important. So it's very tempting just to pass a law in Washington and say, let's order it. Let's just do it. Well, that's not the way things work in the United States of America. You know, we did that with professional development. The law now says, with all that $2.5 billion, do it. Have professional development programs. And I don't know what the senator from Colorado thinks, but my view, and I don't think Secretary Duncan would mind my repeating his comments often, that's the biggest waste of money we have in the federal education program. It's not well used. We say do it, and so they have all these programs, and teachers know it's a waste of time, and everybody knows it's a waste of time. We're not spending that money wisely. So why are we to think if we just say create a teacher evaluation system that all across the country in 15,000 school districts, people will just say, okay, we have to do it to get the money, and they'll just do it. I think it would be the kiss of death for the whole movement. It's tempting to do it. Then yesterday, on my way up here in my little hometown of Maryville, Tennessee, I picked up the newspaper, and it reminded me of why I so strongly believe it is a good idea to create an environment in which school districts and states can create teacher principal evaluation systems, and it's a bad idea to order it, define it, and regulate it from Washington. Here's the headline, and I mentioned this yesterday in my remarks on the floor. Evaluation of teachers contentious. Now, here's the state of Tennessee. Could I ask for 3 more minutes for the senator?
I certainly have no objection.
Without objection.
I thank the senator from Kansas, and I'll kind of speed up my comments a little bit. But I might take 4 unless that's the problem. But I thank the senator from Kansas because I'd like to finish my point, if I may. Remember, the state of Tennessee won Race to the Top. It's been working on teacher evaluation for 25 years. It developed the Sanders model, which was the first real way that we related student achievement to teacher performance. May sound easy, it's pretty hard. Nobody else would do it. This professor in the University of Tennessee Agriculture Department, a statistician, said, I think I can do it, and he did it, and it's being used all around the country in many places, but not every place. Some don't have confidence in it. But so Tennessee wins $500 million in Race to the Top to do what? Have a teacher principal evaluation program. So here they're doing it. 25 years of experience, and it's the front page news, evaluations of teachers contentious. All the struggles with that program. And then we get into here what it's involved. It says that under the new system, this is the Tennessee system of evaluation, tenured teachers will be evaluated at least 4 times each year. Non-tenured teachers will be evaluated at least 6 times each year. Teacher effectiveness ratings are calculated using a formula that's 50% qualitative, 50% quantitative. The quantitative portion combines student growth, 35%, and 15% student achievement. Now, Mr. President, they're having a tough time down in Maryville, Tennessee, and Nashville, Tennessee, implementing their own proposal. It said state officials are traveling across the state to meet with stakeholders. The State of Education's advisory group will bring revision commissions to the education commissioner, one of the best in the country. Based on the proposed revisions, the recommendations might need to be brought before the State Board of Education. Okay. Do we really want them to come to Washington after they get through with that and say, okay, now we've got it figured out, we're having a really hard time doing it. You tell us what to do, you define what we ought to do, and may we please have your permission to do things this way instead of that way? I think not, Mr. President. I think that would be the kiss of death for any movement for teacher principal evaluation. So my plea is that we show some restraint here, that we recognize that just a little movement here makes a big difference there when we're dealing with 3.2 million teachers, when we're dealing with 100,000 schools and 15,000 school districts. Secretary Duncan, whom I greatly admire, says a comprehensive evaluation system based on multiple measures, including student achievement, is essential for education reform to move forward. We cannot retreat from reform. He is exactly right. But that does not mean we need a national school board. That's what a governor, a legislator, a school district, local people ought to be doing, working with teachers. So the NAEA and I may have the same position today on whether to have a mandate, definition, and regulation from Washington of teacher evaluation. We may agree. I can't speak for them. But what I'll be watching them now, as I did 30 years ago, and as I did 15 years ago, 20 years ago as education secretary, I'll be watching to see what they're doing in Tennessee. Are they making it easier for Kevin Huffman and the governor and the legislature to implement this award-winning teacher evaluation program? Or are they making it harder? So I hope we'll have a good full debate as we move to the markup the next few days. I respect the enthusiasm of all those who want to begin a progress for teacher and principal evaluation. I would like to believe that no one wants it to move more than I do. I've watched it for 30 years. I've fought everyone who's against it for 30 years. And I strongly believe that the right way to do it is to recognize that education is like jobs. Both are national concerns, both are of interest to the federal government, but we can't create them from here. We have to create an environment in which local people, state people can create better schools and create better jobs. And in this case, a mandate, definition, and regulation from Washington, a national school board, would be a terrible error. I thank the President. I thank the Senator from Kansas for his courtesy, and I yield the floor.